She ended the marriage with a text. "You're just too safe. I need passion. No punctuation. No warning. Just a warm-blooded sentence from a cold-hearted place." It came through while I was bent over a cracked ridge vent on her father's roof. I had one knee braced against a beam that hadn't seen sealant in a decade, sweat bleeding into my eyes, and a trowel in my hand that shook from hours under the sun. 94 degrees, no breeze. My hands were tar black, my shirt clung to me like skin, and I hadn't stopped working in 6 hours. I read the message. A second buzz followed, delivered from Serenity Springs Spa. She was 2 states away, drinking cucumber water and finding herself. I didn't answer right away. I sat there on that brittle roofline, looking down at the lawn I'd mowed for her parents every spring since 2012, and I let it land. She didn't call, didn't ask to talk, didn't say, "We need to work on this." She declared it, from comfort, while I was covered in grit, fixing a problem she never saw and never would. When my hands stopped shaking, I wiped them on my jeans and typed, "Thank you for being honest." Then I slid the phone back into my pocket and went back to work. There's something about a roof that tells the truth about a house. It holds the weight of seasons, the pressure of storms, and the damage no one wants to see from the ground. This one was buckled in 3 places. The vents had rust blooms. The decking below was soft in spots. Rot had set in where no one bothered to look, just like the marriage. I sealed the flashing, tightened the ridge caps, swept off the last of the broken granules, every motion deliberate, every fix quiet. By the time I climbed down, dusk had crawled over the yard. The tools were heavier, my legs slower, and I knew something with absolute certainty. She thought she'd done something clean. She thought walking away from someone like me was simple. I drove home in silence. Not because I was numb, because I was focused. The kind of focus that comes after a fall, when you're not panicking, just calculating where to land. That night, I slept in the cab of my truck. Not because I had to, because I needed to be still. The seat was stiff, the air hot, and the ache in my hands a perfect match for the one in my chest. But I didn't curse her, didn't replay it, didn't spiral. I just stared at the ceiling and let the silence settle, and in that silence, I started something. Not revenge, not rage, just a quiet resolve. She thought I'd be stunned. She thought I'd crawl. She thought she'd win without a fight. What she didn't know is that men like me don't scream when we're wronged. We observe, we wait, and when we move, it's final. Rachel didn't start distant. She used to make me laugh with her eyebrows. One would twitch every time she lied about something small. She lied about dumb things back then, sneaking chocolate before dinner. Saying she liked my flannel when she hated red. Telling me my hands were too rough, and then holding them for hours. We met at a real estate inspection. She was new. Sharp tongue, smooth pitch, heels too clean for the property we were walking. I was there to check the crawl space. She asked if I'd ever considered doing work for agents directly. I said I didn't do sales. She smirked and said, "Good. I don't trust people who smile too much." We had lunch on the tailgate of my truck. Married 9 months later. Our house was nothing fancy. A 2-bedroom outside of town with a sagging deck and a view of a drainage ditch the city still called a creek. We painted the walls ourselves. I built her a shelf for her vinyls. She hung. String lights that never worked right but made her laugh anyway. She danced barefoot in the kitchen. I'd wake up early just to hear her hum while she fed the cat. That was Rachel. Sharp edges and warm hands, and I loved her for both. Walt, her father, took longer. He had the kind of handshake that tested your bones and the kind of silence that didn't fill a room. It watched it. First time I met him, he asked what I drove. Second thing he asked was how much I made last year. I told him straight. He nodded like he didn't like the answer, but respected the way I said it. That's how it started. Over the years, I fixed his water line in the dead of winter, helped him replace a fuel pump at midnight, built him a ramp when his knees started to go, He never said, "Thank you." He'd just offer coffee or hand me a beer with that grunt men use when they can't quite say, "You matter." And that was enough for me. The shift with Rachel was quiet. Not dramatic, not sudden, just subtle. Trips got longer. Dinners got quieter. She started wearing lipstick to the grocery store and keeping her phone face down during breakfast. I noticed. Of course I did. But I didn't want to believe the cracks meant collapse. So I did what I do when something in a house starts to shift. I reinforced. I worked more, made space for her mood swings, did her father's repairs without mentioning the back pain or the hours I lost. She said I never surprised her anymore. I thought that meant I was steady. Turns out she meant I was predictable, replaceable, boring. She said I made her feel safe, until the day she decided safe was the opposite of alive. One night, I found her credit card bill on the counter, not hidden, not bold, just there. A resort booking, spa package, wine bar in Asheville, 2 tickets. No names, I didn't ask. I just folded it quietly and put it in my drawer, right next to the USB drive where I kept some of my project files. See, I film some of the work I do, not for clients. Not for the internet, just for myself. Angles, problems, progress. Sometimes I'd re-watch them to learn, sometimes to remember what I built, what I saved. When it all looked like it might fall apart, I never told Rachel about those videos. Didn't think they mattered. Turns out, they would. I kept showing up, kept fixing things, kept holding up a roof that was already coming down, because men like me don't walk away at the first leak. We patch, we seal, we wait for the storm to pass. But sometimes the storm is the house. It started with a lock. I came home 2 days after the text to grab some tools. The key didn't work. The house we shared, the one I built shelves in, rewired by hand, repainted twice, was now closed to me. I didn't knock, didn't call. I just stood on the porch and looked through the window. Inside, new flowers, clean countertops, 2 wine glasses on the table, and a man's jacket on the chair that wasn't mine. She didn't just leave, she replaced me. The next morning I got a letter from a law office in Asheville. She had filed the divorce in another county, sought full possession of the house, the truck, and half my retirement, claimed I had abandoned the marital home and created emotional instability. Abandoned while I was patching her father's roof, for free. I moved into a buddy's spare room, didn't bring much, just my tools, a cot, and the safe she hadn't found. Inside, titles, a bond from my grandfather, the only picture I had of my mom holding me. I opened my phone, checked the joint account. What was once $23,000 was now $4,200. She'd drained it. Not in one go, that would have raised flags. It was in pieces, 200 here, 300 there, lifestyle consultants, retreat centers, digital brand workshops. She was reinvesting our marriage into a version of herself that didn't include me. I didn't react, didn't drink, didn't rant to friends. I did what I always do. I took inventory. I went back to her father's place a week later to finish patching the overhang. He didn't say much, just opened the door and pointed to the ladder where I'd left it. His dog, Toby, followed me up and down the lawn like nothing had changed. But something had. Walt's voice was tighter, his steps slower. And when he looked at me, it wasn't with judgment or pity. It was like he was trying to measure something he didn't want to admit. That's when it happened. I was clearing debris from the attic crawl space when I noticed a manila folder wedged under a beam. Inside, a copy of a property transfer, dated 3 months earlier. Signed, supposedly by me, transferring 25% of our home's ownership to Walt. No conversation, no warning, backdated, forged. I brought it to my truck and stared at it for a long time. It didn't make sense at first, but then I saw the plan. She had sold part of our house to her father, likely as a shell move. The idea, file for divorce, claim the remaining stake, then inherit the rest cleanly after Walt passed. It was smart, cold, and illegal. I didn't tell him. I didn't know if he was part of it, or just used like the rest of us. So I just nodded, thanked him, and left. But something in his eyes told me he knew. 2 days later, I stopped by to retrieve my belt sander. Walt thought I'd already picked it up. I hadn't. He looked confused, said Rachel told him I'd moved all my stuff. He looked at the truck, then at me, then said half under his breath, "Some stories fall apart faster when you stop helping them hold." I didn't reply, but that sentence stayed with me all night. That evening he thought I'd left, but I'd forgotten my gloves. Came back quietly through the side door. That's when I heard it, her voice, loud on speakerphone, laughing. No, he still thinks I'm playing fair. It's almost cute. Then something about the roof. Of course he didn't charge. He owed my dad. The house is ours anyway. He just doesn't know it yet. Silence. Then Walt's voice, low, tight, and almost too calm. "You forged my name?" She laughed. "Dad, relax. It's just paperwork. You'll thank me later." I backed out of the house like I'd never been there. Didn't make a sound. But before I pulled away, I saw Walt through the kitchen window. He was sitting alone, head in his hands, like something had cracked that wouldn't patch back up. I didn't confront her, didn't ask questions, didn't accuse, didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She expected anger. That's what people like her are used to, outbursts, chaos, emotional leverage. But I gave her nothing, because I wasn't building rage. I was building a case. I called Eric Trade School Buddy, now head of risk assessment for a litigation support firm that handles corporate asset shielding and digital forensics. The kind of guy who can trace money through a VPN and figure out who clicked send 3 months ago at 2:47 a.m. I sent him everything. Bank records, signatures, metadata from the forged transfer. A USB with 22 minutes of roof footage, just in case. He asked, "You looking to go public?" I said, "I'm looking to go permanent." Then came Diane, Eric's recommendation, a lawyer who didn't smile, didn't flinch, and didn't ask twice. She used to audit hedge funds. Now she undoes people like Rachel for a living. I handed her the folder with the transfer. She flipped through it like it was a grocery list, then asked, "You want scorched earth or surgical?" I said, "Clean, precise, unmistakable." She nodded once, and everything started to move. In 1 week, filed a motion to freeze all joint assets, flagged the forged transfer with the registrar, issued a notice of fraud on the title, connected the WANA notary to Aspire Image Group, a wellness agency with no legal standing, blocked future withdrawals from shared accounts. The structure was in motion. Rachel didn't notice. She was too busy posting spa photos, captions about rebirth, and curated snapshots of her new authentic life. She was throwing a reinvention party. I was quietly turning off the power. The roof footage helped, but it wasn't enough. The forged document, strong, but spinnable. What we lacked was intent. We needed a signature, a witness, something that tied the forgery directly to her hand. That's when Diane said, "The strongest leverage isn't evidence, it's doubt." So we waited. Then her lawyer moved, filed for early division of property, claimed emotional abandonment, cited financial instability, said, "The house was partially transferred to Walt as repayment for an old family loan." Attached was a notarized affidavit, signed by Walt sworn, dated 4 weeks ago. It was clever. A layered lie. Smart, backed by enough paper to confuse a court. Diane called me that night. We might lose the house. I parked behind a closed lumber yard and sat in silence. Thought about the years I spent rebuilding other people's homes while mine was being stolen in spreadsheets and polite filings. And for the first time, I felt it. Not panic, not revenge, just that raw, tight certainty. I could end this in 5 minutes. One knock at her door, one confrontation, one very public correction of her memory. But I didn't move. because I wasn't here to win by noise, was here to win by structure, and I knew something she didn't. She thought the affidavit would hold. She thought the signature would stand. But she forgot something. She forgot who taught her father to sign his name again after his stroke. Ida Tay watched him relearn each letter, one slow curve at a time. And that signature, wasn't it? The courthouse smelled like dust and paper, nothing dramatic, just layers of quiet endings. Her team showed up polished, pressed suits. Expensive shoes, smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Rachel didn't look at me. She just sat 2 rows ahead, pretending this was routine. As if filing for full asset division, claiming abandonment and emotional distress, was just another Wednesday. My side was smaller. Just Diane. No theatrics. No table of documents. Just one folder, one pen, and a calm voice sharpened by years of audits. The judge entered. Introductions were made. Then it began. Her lawyer opened hard. They painted me as emotionally detached, unavailable. Said I had ceased. Meaningful contribution to the household. That my repairs were sporadic. That I prioritized labor over partnership. Then came the affidavit, the one from Walt, presented as validation that the transfer of property had been part of an informal family arrangement. A quiet, mutual decision. No malice, just repayment of an old debt. It was clean, well-worded, backed by a timeline just tight enough to cast doubt. Diane objected, requested authentication of the notary, challenged the signature as inconsistent with prior legal documents signed by Walt. The judge raised an eyebrow, asked if we had alternate proof. Diane slid the roof footage forward, explained the context. Cued the clip with Walt's voice, soft but clear. "You didn't have to do this, Matt. Thank you." The judge watched, nodded, but didn't rule. Then came the pause. That moment where the entire case hovered, 1 inch from falling. Diane leaned in, low voice. "If we can't prove she orchestrated it, this stays in limbo. Fraud's hard to lock without intent." I stared straight ahead. I'd done everything right. I'd stayed silent, stayed smart, stayed clean. And still, she was close to getting everything. The house, the story, the final word. Then the courtroom. Door opened, and Walt walked in. No fanfare, no announcement. Just an old man in a worn jacket with something in his eyes that looked a lot like shame. He walked straight to the front, asked to speak, swore in. The judge allowed it. Her lawyer objected. Too late. Walt cleared his throat, then looked at Rachel, then at me, and said, "Matthew never owed me a thing. He fixed that roof because he's a good man. The signature on that affidavit? That's not mine. My daughter forged it." Silence. Actual silence. Not the courtroom kind. The kind that changes things. Rachel didn't cry, didn't scream. She just exhaled, like she'd finally been seen through. The judge didn't ask further questions. Didn't need to. Final ruling came a week later. The property transfer was voided. Rachel lost all claims to the house. Her attempt to shift assets through fraudulent means led to sanctions. She was ordered to repay a portion of the joint funds she drained. The divorce was finalized with no alimony, no equity split. And my pension? Untouched. Outside the courtroom, Diane shook my hand once, said, "You built it brick by brick. That's the only way it stays standing." Rachel didn't speak to me, didn't even look back. She got into a rideshare. No ring, no keys, no story. Left to control. She'd tried to rewrite the ending, but forgot the one rule people like her never see coming. The truth takes longer, but it always arrives. I didn't celebrate. Didn't toast. Didn't tell anyone she lost. I just went home. To Walt's house. It still smelled like him. Coffee. Wood polish. Old tobacco from a pipe he never lit. I kept the furniture the way it was. Didn't repaint. Didn't rearrange. Some things don't need to be claimed to be earned. For weeks, I worked in silence. Reorganized tools. rebuilt a cracked stair tread, took apart an old workbench and reassembled it tighter, stronger, one piece at a time, like I was reminding the place who I was. Not angry, just steady. A month passed. One afternoon, I was stacking scrap lumber when I heard paws on the gravel. Toby, Walt's dog. Old bones, cloudy eyes, same slow walk. He'd been with a neighbor, but that day, he found his way back to the porch and sat beside my toolbox. Didn't bark, didn't ask, just stayed. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, me too." We settled into a rhythm. Coffee in the morning, repair work in the afternoon, evenings on the porch, watching the light change through the trees. No noise, no drama, just things that held. Some nights I thought of her. Not with pain, not with hate, just with clarity. She wanted to be a wildfire. I was the man who rebuilt after it passed. She left looking for passion. I found peace. People talk about winning, but for men like me, winning isn't loud. It's not a spotlight or a headline. It's a clean floor, a steady dog, a house that doesn't leak when it rains. And sometimes, peace isn't what you fight for. It's what stays when the fire burns itself out. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.